The chipped porcelain of my teacup felt cool against my fingertips, a stark contrast to the simmering unease in my chest. 67 years old, and a young man's glance had the power to unravel me. It sounds absurd, I know. Amelia Davies, a widow living in the Denver suburbs, alone, except for Oliver, my perpetually unimpressed Persian cat. Divorced for over a decade, Edward had traded me for a younger woman, a fact that still stung, a dull ache beneath the surface of my carefully constructed solitude. My daughter, nestled in Florida sunshine with her grandchildren, occasionally sent fleeting promises of a call, promises that often faded like distant music. Ryan, my grandson, was the exception. His texts were brief, punctuated by emojis and the occasional picture of some culinary experiment. But they always ended the same: Grandma, I miss your apple pie. Each message chipped away at the loneliness, a tiny hammer against the fortress of my solitude. Then came the text, the one that shattered the carefully constructed calm: Grandma, I'm coming back on Thursday. I've booked a ticket. The house cleaning commenced immediately. I unearthed forgotten treasures, crystal glasses from Christmases past, neglected window panes reflecting a world ID almost forgotten. I lit vanilla and cinnamon candles, Ryan's favorites, and resurrected a casserole recipe Edward had detested, but Ryan had adored as a child. When the doorbell rang, I felt a flutter, a hummingbird's frantic wings in my chest. I smoothed my sweater, brushed back my hair, and smiled, bracing myself for the familiar comfort of my grandson's embrace. But Ryan wasn't alone. Beside him stood a young man, tall and slender, his dark hair pulled back in a loose bun. His skin was the color of warm earth, his eyes deep pools reflecting a quiet gravity that felt out of place, a haunting melody played on a silent string instrument. Grandma, Ryan said, his voice a little hesitant, I brought Cody, my roommate. He doesn't have anywhere to go this summer. I hope you don't mind. Cody's smile was tentative, a fragile bloom in the shadow of his quiet demeanor. A smile that spoke volumes of unspoken rejections, a silent echo of hidden hurts. The words, I wasn't prepared, hung on my tongue, but instead a wave of unexpected warmth washed over me. Ours, you two come in. Ryan moved through the house with the easy familiarity of someone who'd grown up within these walls. Cody followed, his footsteps barely audible, as if he were walking on tiptoe through a sacred space. He wasn't like the other college kids I'd encountered. There was a depth in his eyes, a quiet intensity that hinted at unspoken struggles, a hidden sorrow etched beneath the surface of his calm composure. He likes to be quiet, Ryan explained as we settled around the dining table, the scent of cinnamon filling the air. But you'll like him. Cody makes better salads than I do. It's not that hard, I replied, attempting a light-hearted tone. You used to feed me salads with mayonnaise, remember? Cody chuckled, a low, hesitant sound, as if afraid to disturb the quiet harmony of the old house. As I served the meal, my gaze drifted to Cody. He accepted the stew with a simple nod, his fingers brushing mine. Contact was fleeting, a mere whisper against my skin, yet it sent a tremor through me, a ripple of something unexpected. But it wasn't just the touch, it was the look he gave me afterwards. It wasn't the casual glance of a young man, acknowledging a kindness. It was a gaze that pierced through the layers of my carefully constructed persona, a profound understanding that transcended the years, that saw beyond the silver in my hair, the wrinkles etched on my face, to the essence of who I truly was, the woman, silently yearning, longing for a connection that had been lost, a forgotten melody longing to be played again. That night, sleep evaded me. Ryan slept soundly in his old room, but I could hear Cody moving quietly in the living room, the soft rustle of slippers, a gentle counterpoint to the silence. I lay there, my eyes wide open in the darkness, the weight of that look pressing down on me. Why had it left me feeling so profoundly unsettled, yet strangely awakened? The morning sun painted the kitchen in warm hues, the familiar comfort of routine, a fragile shield against the rising tide of uncertainty. The rhythmic tick-tock of the old wall clock, the low hum of the radio, the familiar voice of a morning news anchor, these were the anchors of my world, holding me steady in the face of the unexpected storm brewing in my soul. Then I heard footsteps, light as a feather, and Cody appeared at the kitchen doorway. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt, his hair damp, pulled back loosely at the nape of his neck, a small book clutched in his hand. He smiled, a gentle, almost apologetic smile, as if he were intruding on sacred ground. "I'm used to waking up early," he murmured, his voice husky from sleep. "Good," I replied, pouring him a cup of coffee. "This house needs someone to talk to in the morning. Oliver just meows." He laughed, a genuine laugh that resonated with a depth of emotion that surprised me. "Black coffee, no sugar, no cream," I said, offering him the steaming mug. "Not many people under 30 drink black coffee," I added, a touch of amusement in my voice. "Edward, my ex-husband, used to call it morning poison." Cody took a sip. "Maybe because he didn't need to be that awake," he said, his words carrying a weight that went beyond their simple meaning. It wasn't merely politeness, it was a keen awareness of unspoken emotions, a quiet sensitivity that resonated deeply within me. The days that followed unfolded in a strange, comforting rhythm. Ryan, still the exuberant boy he always had been, dragged Cody around the neighborhood, pointing out Aunt Ruth's house, the old oak tree that had been the setting for countless childhood adventures, and the corner of the garden where Edward had futilely tried to grow jalapenos. In the afternoon, their laughter drifted from the backyard, echoing the sounds of a life I'd almost forgotten. They were like children, drenched in sweat and unrestrained joy. "You guys look like you're in an energy drink commercial," I called, and their laughter only intensified. "We're thinking about starting a YouTube channel about gardening," Ryan announced, his voice breathless with excitement. "What's the name of the channel?" I asked. Cody looked at me and then said, mowing with strangers. My laughter echoed the laughter of a past, more vibrant era, when this yard had been filled with the sounds of unrestrained joy. That evening, as we watched a classic movie, Ryan's head rested on my shoulder, and Cody's quiet gesture of covering Ryan with a blanket ignited a surprising warmth in my heart. It wasn't love, not exactly, but a quiet yearning for connection, a deep craving to be close, to be seen. It was a craving that had been dormant for too long, a silent longing for a shared quiet. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of exhilaration. I chose a pale green dress, a color I'd previously deemed too light for my age, applied lipstick, and combed my hair. This wasn't for anyone's approval. It was a quiet rebellion against the confines of my own self-imposed limitations. I wanted to feel alive, and I was going to embrace that feeling with both hands. At the farmer's market, Cody and I found ourselves falling into an easy rhythm of conversation. He selected a bouquet of lavender. "Do you like this scent?" he asked. I like scents that remind me of things I've forgotten, I replied. He simply nodded, an understanding passing between us that words couldn't quite capture. He handed me an old photograph, a snapshot of Ryan and me from a picnic, a memory I had completely forgotten. I found this in the garage, he said. Holding the photo, a piece of my past suddenly restored. I felt a rush of emotions, a sense of loss, of rediscovery, of a life resurrected. The fourth day, the wind whispered the beginnings of autumn, a crispness in the air that hinted at the coming change of seasons. I was arranging vegetables in a bamboo basket when Cody appeared at the back door, carrying a bunch of unwashed carrots. The light filtering through the window created a hazy, ethereal glow around him. I forgot to wash these, he said, his words halting, almost childish. His hands, tanned and strong, spoke of work, of life lived beyond the confines of a college campus. As I took the carrots, our fingers brushed. He didn't leave. He leaned against the edge of the table, and his eyes, deep and contemplative, met mine. You seem to like doing things the old-fashioned way, he observed, his gaze taking in the familiar objects in my kitchen, the glass spice jars, the lace tablecloth, the old clock. They are the artifacts of my life, the silent witnesses to years of laughter and tears. Old doesn't mean outdated, I replied, and a smile escaped my lips. It's just, I've lived with these things long enough to trust them. His nod was genuine, profound. In that moment, a long, dormant yearning, a profound longing that had laid dormant for far too long, awoke within me. A longing to share what was left of my life with him, to connect with someone who saw beyond the years, beyond the superficial, and into the heart of who I truly was, a woman who, despite the years and the loneliness, still had so much life left to give. A woman who, in the quiet presence of a young man, felt the stirrings of a forgotten spring. The scent of lavender hung heavy in the air, a ghostly perfume clinging to the twilight. It was a scent that tugged at something deep within me, a forgotten memory wrapped in the soft folds of time. I'm not young anymore. 62 years have etched lines onto my face, lines that mirror the cracks in the foundation of my life. Years of quiet solitude, punctuated only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall. But tonight, the silence felt different. It held a resonance, a vibration that hummed beneath the surface. Ryan, my grandson, was out with friends, leaving only the gentle rustle of the wind through the garden and the quiet presence of Cody, a young man, visiting Ryan on the back porch. He was reading, a silhouette against the fading light, his young shoulders hunched in concentration. Had said something earlier, something that had chipped away at the carefully constructed walls of my reserve. Something about trust and the agonizing betrayal it can bring. He hadn't plied me for details, simply offered a quiet, insightful observation. Does it hurt when the thing you trust most is the thing that hurts you the most? His words, simple yet profound, struck a chord that resonated through decades of unspoken pain. I saw in him not just a young man, but a reflection of my own weary soul. A soul that had learned to survive by burying its emotions deep, deep down. I carried 2 mugs of hot cocoa out to him, the warmth a small act of defiance against the chilling solitude that had become my constant companion. Coffee is for the morning, he murmured, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. I need something lighter tonight. We sat in companionable silence, the wind whispering secrets through the lavender bushes. He spoke then, his voice low, barely a breath. "I miss my mom," he said. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken grief. I didn't offer platitudes, just listened. He spoke of the scent of her perfume, a memory as sharp and poignant as a shard of glass. The last time he smelled, it was the night she left. His words echoed a similar emptiness within me. I shifted closer, my hand brushing his arm, the nearness of touch creating a subtle tremor of connection. "I've learned not to ask anything of anyone," he said, his voice fading, "but sometimes I get tired." His face was illuminated by the porch light, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, a reflection of a sorrow I understood profoundly. The desire to offer comfort was an almost physical ache, a desperate longing to bridge the chasm of years and unspoken pain. I could feel the profound loneliness radiating from him and felt a pang of recognition in the hollow echo of my own heart. "No one should live without an expectation of return, Cody," I whispered, my voice a mere echo in the vast emptiness of the night. That night, sleep evaded me. My body thrashed, restless and agitated, my mind a whirlwind of half-remembered conversations, of years spent guarding my heart. I wandered to the kitchen, seeking solace in a cup of chamomile tea. On the table lay Cody's leather notebook. A loose piece of paper fluttered to the floor, revealing a handwritten note, the ink smudged and faded. "I wonder if anyone would ever wait for me at the door, even once," it read. The words were a mirror to my own past, a poignant echo of a journal entry I had written 30 years prior, after a devastating argument with Edward. The same profound isolation, the same desperate plea for connection, the same silent question, "Does anyone really want me to come home?" The realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just Cody's pain I felt, it was my own, unearthed and laid bare after years of careful concealment. A door had opened, not just to Cody, but to a long-forgotten part of myself. 5 days later, a soft rain softened the edges of the world. The house was hushed, the sounds muffled by the damp air. Ryan was out with friends, and Cody, lost in his own world, sat in his room, the mellow strains of jazz barely audible through the closed door. I paused outside his room, watching him work at his laptop, a notebook and steaming coffee beside him. "Are you working on something?" I asked softly. "An essay on Baldwin," he replied, his eyes meeting mine. "He writes with truth and blood." His words, so perceptive, so insightful, resonated with my own unspoken longings. That evening, the aroma of stew filled the house, a simple act of comfort in the face of profound unspoken emotions. As I turned to get glasses, our hands brushed, the fleeting touch sending a ripple of unexpected warmth through me. He flinched, then smiled. I pretended it was nothing, but a blush warmed my cheeks. Later, as Ryan was delayed, we watched an old film, in the mood for love. During a scene where the two lovers passed silently in the rain, Cody let out a soft sigh. "I used to think love was something that needed to be said," he whispered, "but maybe sometimes silence hurts more than rejection." Distant thunderclaps startled me, and instinctively, I leaned closer, my shoulder touching his. He didn't move away. He held my gaze, a silent question in his eyes. In that moment, the years melted away, the barriers crumbled, and I felt a connection, a profound understanding that transcended words. His hand found mine, a gentle, hesitant touch that spoke volumes. We sat like that, engulfed in the silence, broken only by the rhythm of the rain and the whispered secrets of the movie. "Are you cold?" I asked, the question a shaky plea for connection. No, he replied. In the quiet of my room that night, I couldn't shake the sense of being profoundly, unexpectedly touched. The next morning, the rain had stopped, the sunlight painting golden stripes across the kitchen floor. The normalcy of the day was jarring, a stark contrast to the deep emotion of the previous night. We didn't speak of what had happened, a tacit agreement woven into the fabric of the morning. Ryan returned, his laughter filling the house, and yet I felt changed, forever altered by the subtle shift in the landscape of my heart. That evening, I took 2 mugs of cocoa to the back porch, finding Cody lost in his notebook. Some things can't be kept in a book, right? I said, my voice barely a whisper. He looked up, his eyes reflecting the quiet depths of my own soul. Have you ever wanted to disappear? He asked, his question piercing the carefully constructed walls of my composure. Yes, I admitted, staring out at the maple tree in the garden. Images of my past rising to the surface. I spoke of my pain, of the discovery of Edward's betrayal years ago, and yet the tears didn't come. It was as if years of sorrow had been quietly released in the simple sharing of my story. Cody listened patiently without judgment. He didn't offer solutions, only understanding. We continued as we always did, setting the table, baking cookies, and preparing for the night, the silence between us charged with something unspoken and significant. Later, finding the cocoa untouched, I felt the words rise in my throat, words I'd been unable to utter for years. I used to think if I disappeared, it would be easier, I said, my voice thick with emotion. No one would have to wait for me. No one would have to see me weak. But you didn't disappear, he said softly. A wave of laughter broke through the tension. My daughter's phone call, a simple request for help with a burnt chicken, had prevented my self-imposed exile. No, I said, because my daughter called in the middle of the night to ask how to fix a burnt roast chicken. He smiled. The laughter, a fragile bud of hope, bloomed in the quiet intimacy of our shared experience. Do you think I'm strong? He asked, his voice soft, almost hesitant. No, I replied. I think you're the one who survived. His gaze dropped to his hands, his fingers intertwined, as if clinging to something precious, fragile. He began to tell his story of his mother's leaving and his father's cold words, words that mirrored my own past. Don't cry, his father had said. Put away all that girly stuff. The same harsh words that echoed my own mother's cruel admonitions. Do you ever feel like you're fading? I asked, my voice gentle, empathetic. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resilience. He spoke of his self-imposed isolation, of the years he spent avoiding connection, a self-preservation tactic that had left him feeling both alone and, surprisingly, safe. In that shared silence, in that mutual understanding of unspoken pain, I felt a sense of profound peace. In the quiet recognition of our shared journey, I found the start of something new, something hopeful in the shared silence of 2 wounded hearts. The rain hammered against the attic window, a relentless rhythm mirroring the frantic beat of my heart. Dust motes danced in the weak beam of my single lamp, illuminating the faded floral wallpaper, a testament to decades spent in this old house, a house filled with echoes of laughter and loss. I was alone, as I often was these days, the silence punctuated only by the insistent drumming of the rain. Amelia, by the way, though lately, even that feels like a stranger's name. A widow, a woman quietly fading into the background of her own life. Then, Cody arrived. Ryan's friend had come over, ostensibly to borrow a book, but his hesitant presence hung heavier than any borrowed volume. He sat on the worn armchair, the silence between us thick with unspoken things. "Do you ever feel like you're fading?" I silence, my voice gentle, empathetic, a question born of my own quiet desperation. He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the stormy sky outside, a mixture of sadness and a surprising resilience. He spoke of his self-imposed isolation, of the years he spent avoiding connection, a self-preservation tactic that had left him feeling both alone and, surprisingly, safe. In that shared silence, in that mutual understanding of unspoken pain, I felt a sense of profound peace, a fragile connection forming in the quiet recognition of our shared journey. I nodded slowly, a flicker of recognition mirroring his own words. Fading in crowds, fading in mirrors. Sometimes I thought the person staring back wasn't me, a stranger in a familiar face. That fear, that disconnect, had frozen me for years. I too had felt like a supporting character in my own life, a silent observer in the drama of others. This time, though, hesitation didn't grip me. I reached out, placing my hand lightly on the back of his. "But you're still here," I said gently. "Still sitting here. Someone's pouring you cocoa, right?" A soft laugh escaped Cody, but this time something cracked in the sound, a vulnerability that resonated deep within me. "For the first time," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper, "I feel like I'm not fading." The wind sighed outside, a light caress against the window pane. He turned away, silent for a moment, then continued. "I know things are strange, but no one has ever listened to me like you." I withdrew my hand, placing it over my rapidly beating heart. "You don't need to aim," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the storm. "I've never had anyone listen to me without wanting to change me." We looked at each other, a profound understanding passing between us. This time, there was no shyness, no imposed boundaries. Just two souls seeking refuge in each other's gaze, not to hide, but to be seen. That moment needed no words, no promises. It simply existed, a testament to the shared vulnerability of two wounded hearts. And I knew that no matter what happened next, this moment, this fragile connection, was undeniably real. The late afternoons began to fill me with a strange longing. It wasn't the encroaching darkness, nor the chill wind of early autumn, but the quiet hours when Ryan was out, when the house fell silent, and I found myself yearning for Cody's presence. A simple act of connection that had suddenly become essential. The clinking of mugs, the gentle rhythm of my daily life. I desperately wanted Cody to enter the kitchen, to ask me what I was doing, to hand me that spice jar from the top shelf, or just to stand there, his hands in his pockets, his eyes unabashedly following my movements, as if, in his world, I was the still point of his universe, anchoring him to the chaos of his past. One evening, we watched before sunrise again. Ryan slept early, leaving us bathed in the flickering blue light of the screen. When the film reached the scene where the two lovers walked along the Danube, discussing love and death, Cody whispered, "I've wanted to have a conversation like that all night." "Me, too," I replied, half joking, the words a reflection of my own longing. Cody turned to me, his eyes filled with an intensity I hadn't anticipated. "But usually people only want to talk all night to someone they don't want to leave." My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drum solo. Part of me wanted to push away the burgeoning feelings, to retreat to the familiar safety of solitude. But another part, the part that ached every night as I lay alone in bed, yearned to stay. I sat still, letting the feeling wash over me, like sitting on the edge of a cliff, unsure if I would leap into the abyss. Cody moved closer, the space between our shoulders almost disappearing. He rested his arm on the back of my chair, not touching, but close enough for me to feel the warmth lingering on my neck. "Amelia," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "If I told you I liked you, would you think I was crazy?" I swallowed, a lump forming in my throat. Part of me wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as youthful infatuation. But another part, the one that still mourned the loss of my own husband, wanted to cry. "I think you're lost," I said, my voice light as air, a carefully constructed defense. "Maybe," he admitted, a hint of desperation in his tone. But I didn't want to leave where I was. For the first time, I felt the door in my hands, the power to open or close it, no one pushing, no one pulling, just me, standing there, my hand on the knob, my heart a chaotic symphony of conflicting emotions. The next morning, I lingered in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments where I'd almost stumbled into mistakes and pulled back at the last second. But this didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a longing, something I'd lost within myself for too long. I heard Cody downstairs, the clink of glasses, the familiar tune of my morning radio show. A smile touched my lips. When I finally descended the stairs, his eyes met mine, bright with an unspoken anticipation. "I made coffee," he said, his voice casual, as if nothing extraordinary had happened the night before. "Thanks," I replied, the word hanging heavy with unspoken implications. We didn't speak again, we didn't touch, but every glance, every quiet good morning was a silent agreement. The line between us was thinning, and neither of us was sure enough to want to keep it. The rain returned, mirroring the turbulent emotions churning within me. I sat in my small study, a forgotten notebook open before me, its blank pages mocking my inability to capture the complexities of my feelings. I wrote a single line: "If age is a limit, then who sets the boundaries?" Then I slammed the notebook shut. Later, Cody brought in an old book, Kate Chopin's The Awakening, a book I'd mentioned in passing. Hid it in the garage, amidst boxes of forgotten memories. "She read it when she was going through a difficult time," he reminded me, his voice soft, understanding. I flipped through the pages, the underlined lines, the smudged ink testament to a woman's struggle. "She drowned by expectation, then again by desire," I murmured, feeling Edna Pontellier's pain resonate within my own soul. "But she didn't die," Cody corrected gently, his gaze steady. He was talking about both of us. I knew it. That night, I dabbed perfume behind my ears, a gesture I hadn't made in years. I wore a long burgundy nightgown, soft, feminine, a whisper of forgotten self. I don't know why I did it. Perhaps it was the longing to feel like a woman again, not just a lonely woman. Cody was reading when I emerged from my room, his eyes momentarily frozen as our gazes met. I started to turn away, but he called my name softly, "Amelia." I paused, my heart quickening. "Can you sit with me?" For a while. His voice was a breath, as if afraid to break something fragile. I sat beside him, the silence intimate and charged. He reached for my hand, slowly, hesitantly. This time, I didn't pull away. He leaned close, his warm breath on my cheek. Do you want to? He whispered, the sentence unfinished, hanging between us. I looked into his eyes, seeing not only desire, but respect, awaiting a deep absence of any sense of possession. I touched his cheek, the touch as soft and fragile as a spring petal. Not tonight, I whispered. He nodded, withdrawing his hand, neither angry nor insistent. Thanks for not pushing me away, he said, his voice low. I retreated to my room, my hand pressed to my chest, where my heart beat with a newfound rhythm. Had I crossed a line, or was I still standing on the edge? The next morning, the air smelled of rain and sunshine, a mixture as volatile as my own emotions. I was at the market, buying simple things: carrots, basil, strawberry jam, when I heard Betty's voice. Amelia, how long has it been? Her hair was still a crow's nest, her eyes still darting like restless top. She knew everything, or at least she thought she did. I heard your nephew's back, and he brought a friend, she said, her eyes assessing my shopping bag. Ryan's back for the summer, I said, my voice steady. That Cody boy, right? She emphasized the name, her lips curling into a knowing smirk. Has been helping you with the garden, hasn't he? Very nice of him. The casual cruelty of her words hung in the air. Her tone, the implication of an inappropriate relationship, left a stain on my soul. I smiled faintly and retreated, but her words echoed in my ears, a persistent judgment. Later, Ryan burst into the kitchen, phone held high. A post from a neighborhood group, intergenerational friendship, or some such, accompanied by a blurry photo of Cody and me on the porch, our hands close, our eyes locked in the golden light. My heart sank, cold and heavy. Ma'am, Ryan's voice was strained. What is this? I swallowed, trying to maintain composure. You see, Cody and I had time to talk, but not like you think. What do you mean? His confusion was evident, yet tinged with a dawning disappointment. I looked at my grandson, the child I'd once rocked to sleep, now questioning my actions with the suspicion of a stranger. You didn't do anything wrong, Ryan. But people will think you did. Because, I thought bitterly, I'm too old to be loved without judgment. That night, Cody knocked, his young face etched with worry. I'm sorry, he said, his voice hushed. I didn't want to hurt you, I replied. It's because you didn't want to hurt me that we're in this mess. He took a step closer. Ryan looks at me like a stranger, he said quietly. He needs time. We stood in the darkness, nameless shadows. Do you regret it? I asked. He shook his head. But I'm afraid it'll make you regret it. I didn't answer, only said, it's going to rain tomorrow. You should go to bed early. I closed the door slowly, but my heart remained open. This wasn't about me anymore. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. The house was quiet, not because of the absence of sound, but because of the weight of unspoken things hanging between Ryan, Cody, and me. The scent of wood smoke and rain hung heavy in the air, clinging to the damp wool of my cardigan. Ryan's words echoed in the stillness. He looks at me like a stranger, head whispered, his voice barely audible above the drumming of rain against the window panes. We were nameless shadows in the dimly lit hallway, the silence thick with unspoken anxieties. Ryan and Cody, their lives intertwined with mine in ways I was only beginning to comprehend. I was a woman of quiet routines, a librarian in a small town, but the last few weeks had unraveled the carefully constructed tapestry of my life, leaving behind a raw, exposed vulnerability. "Do you regret it?" "I asked Ryan, my voice catching slightly. His response, a simple shake of his head, offered little solace. "No," Head murmured, "but I'm afraid it'll make you regret it." His words were a chilling premonition. I offered a thin smile, a brittle defense against the encroaching fear. "Going to rain tomorrow," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "You should go to bed early." The door closed quietly, but the house felt anything but quiet. It thrummed with unspoken words, unspoken desires, the weight of secrets shared and unshared, hanging heavy between Ryan, Cody, and me. Sleep eluded me for 2 nights. The silence wasn't the absence of sound, but rather a suffocating presence, the unspoken things between us, a relentless pressure against my ribs. We were choosing to say less, not out of anger, but because any further words felt like they would shatter everything, leaving only irreparable fragments. I found myself avoiding Cody's gaze, not from dislike, but from a terror of seeing that familiar look again, the look of a soul untouched by tender, unconditional love. A look I recognized with a sickening familiarity in my own reflection. I was beginning to pull away, a silent retreat from the intensity of it all. Then that afternoon, bathed in the pale, melancholic light of a late autumn sun, Cody came knocking. The air felt thick with foreboding. It was as if the very atmosphere anticipated an ending. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low and strained. I nodded, a silent invitation. He sat in the small chair by my bookcase, a weariness etched into his posture, a quiet exhaustion in his eyes. He spoke of the past, of her, of himself, his words a halting stream of confessions. I listened, my own heart a tumultuous sea of conflicting emotions. Initially, I wasn't sure what I wanted: clarity, resolution, escape. I only knew that she, the woman at the center of their shared turmoil, was the first person who had made him feel he could stay. His words were like a soft scratch on a vulnerable soul, raw and honest. He confessed to wanting more, not material things, but her presence, her voice, the gentle touch of hand on his shoulder. He had sought comfort, but the desire to linger, to lean on her, had grown into something deeper, more profound. There were times, he confessed, his voice barely a whisper, when I thought about leaning on her to stay. To stay a long time. I looked at him, a silent question in my eyes. "And have you?" I finally asked. He shook his head. "No, I can't. Because the closer I am to her, the less I want to be someone who makes her doubt herself." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring his features. "Thank you for being honest," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. I poured 2 cups of tea, a small act of ritual in the face of an overwhelming emotional storm. I sat beside him, not across, not distant, but close enough to share the warmth of the steaming mugs. "I thought I could control everything," I began, my voice low. "That I was mature enough to know my limits. But you made me see one thing clearly. I was still vulnerable, still yearning to be touched, like a woman who had never truly lived." Cody listened patiently, offering no interruption, only understanding. "And that scared me," I continued, "not afraid of you, afraid of myself. Afraid that I might lose my mind just because someone said my name with a non-judgmental look." "You're not wrong," Cody said softly. Maybe society doesn't think so, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough to fight it again. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the relentless ticking of the clock. Each tick a sharp stab to the heart. "It'll go," Cody said finally, his voice tinged with a quiet resignation. "No rush," I replied. "I don't want to cut any deeper," he said. "If this keeps up, one of us will be hurt forever." A sigh, a soft surrender, escaped my lips. "We've come too far to be strangers again," I whispered, but the words felt hollow. "But not far enough to be anything else," Cody added, his voice barely a breath. I nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in his words. One last time, I placed my hand on his, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine. He squeezed gently, holding the warmth for a few precious seconds. "You came into my life as an uninvited variable," I said, but so precisely that it made me realize how I had lived all this time. He pulled his hand away, a soft smile playing on his lips, a sad smile like the melancholic beauty of an autumn night. "Then don't forget me," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Never," he replied. The airport, the parting, was devoid of drama, of grand gestures. We understood. There was no need for a final public embrace. What we had shared, what we had lived, spoke volume. I watched him walk away, his small suitcase trailing behind him, past the lavender bed we had tended together. No promises, no "I'll be back," no "wait for me." Just a lingering glance, a silent goodbye. The gate closed, the days that followed blending into a quiet monotony. Ryan left a few weeks later, embarking on a new job in another state, and the house fell silent, as if I dared not break the stillness. Betty stopped by, her casual inquiry about my well-being, a thinly veiled attempt to ascertain Cody's departure. "I heard that Cody left," she remarked, a hint of amusement in her voice. "That's true," I replied, a gentle smile playing on my lip. "Young people, you can't keep them forever." I didn't explain, didn't justify. Some relationships, I realized, are like a summer breeze, light, warm, fleeting, yet their fragrance lingers long after they've gone. And perhaps that is enough.